And 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the sun's high in the sky. We went through 3 days of not a cloud in the sky, and it looked like sunset. I have some incredible pictures of that. But because of that, trying to close up your house and make it airtight doesn't seem to work either. There's got to be a balance. There's got to be some way that you can survive inside and out other than just running away from the entire part of the country.
Well, I wish there was an easier answer, but there really isn't. I think that you do have to do the best you can to seal up those cracks and crevices with weather stripping, with caulking. They make a little product called a door saddle that fits on the bottom of the door, where you can slide that down and tighten up the threshold so that there's not air coming in from underneath the door. I think once you do that, of course, as we've always said, it's got to be a holistic solution. That's at least part of the problem. But if you can take the time to seal off some of those entry points where the smoke is coming in from the outside, then you can address the indoor air quality with good filtration, good purification, those kinds of things that are more proactive in terms of oxidizing those contaminants that are in the air. So it definitely can be done. I think it's just maybe a little more effort than most people are willing to take. I think they'd almost rather go to the mall.
During those 4 days that we had the really bad smoke conditions here, I have monitors all over the place. I have outside monitors, inside monitors for my air quality and conditions. And I have one unit called a Foobot, which I know you're familiar with, in my office. I intentionally, in my office, did not run air purification. And I had a door open. I was keeping it open to the outside. The thing was glowing so bright orange. You probably saw it from Louisiana. It was just, the air quality was absolutely awful. In the house, where I kept doors, windows closed, and ran a lot of purification technologies, very proactive stuff, it was really fine. There was no odor inside the house. Whether I think we went a little bit on the positive pressure side, which would have helped with that also, keeping everything out. But there was a tremendous difference with that. I have graphical readings that I actually show in an interview with Dr. Gavin McGregor Skinner that shows in the morning before the smoke hit the first day, everything was very low, almost not detectable on outdoor air quality. And as it hit, it spiked really high and stayed there for almost 4.5, 5 days. Slowly started to go away. But, it went away. And again, people go back to the out of sight, out of mind philosophy. I don't see this going away. There's a film all over everything that's out there, from the smoke, the ash that was out. What kind of concerns are there for long-lasting effects from the stuff that people have breathed in and what's still out there?
Well, I think that's a really good point. Of course, I'm not a medical doctor, but I do know that people who are breathing poor quality air over a long period of time typically are going to have some pretty negative health effects. I mean, you think about all the people that have suffered from their efforts to solve the problems during 9/11, all of the people that suffered after Hurricane Katrina, and they were in these contaminated environments working, and they weren't protecting themselves at all. That there's got to be some long-range concerns about those contaminants that are still hanging out. So I think the key is, for me, would be to do the best I can while it's going on right now, but do the best I can to keep the surfaces clean, to keep the air clean, to keep the air purified and filtered, to do the best I can now so that I can offset the potential for what might be a buildup of contamination over a long period of time. I remember reading several years ago in Reader's Digest about a single cigarette producing over 4,000 chemical gases, 43 of which are carcinogenic. And the article went on to say, interestingly enough, that secondhand smoke that a person would be breathing who's not smoking was in some cases more dangerous than the person who was smoking, that it was affecting the person who was breathing that smoke worse than it was affecting the person who was actually doing the smoking. So I think there's a lot for us to learn long term. But at least to begin with, I think the answer is, what can I do right now to make sure that I'm creating the cleanest environment that I possibly can? Because one of the things that I do have control over, may not have any control over what's going on outside, but I certainly have control over what's going on inside. And you know as well as I do that there are ways that we can do that will make sure that we're breathing the best air that we can breathe in spite of what's going on outside.
I just want to change directions real quick because I did another episode with Dan Reese. He's let me get his title. He is a wildfire strategist and an aviation advisor dealing with wildfires. And we spoke at length about some of the things that are going on out there, the lack of education, what people don't understand and know. And I said, what are you concerned about? And he talked about the two different types of wildfires. One is where it's burning a forest, putting smoke in the air from the trees, the brush, and stuff like that. The other type is when it's burning a forest and starts burning homes and businesses and factories and putting all of these other unknown chemistries in the air.
Right.
It takes it to a whole nother level. Now, in my area, they were talking about every news channel wearing your N95 mask or your N100 mask. Well, that's fine for larger particulates, but it's not going to do anything for the gases or the chemicals that are in the air. They go right through it like you're not wearing a mask whatsoever. Where's the concern on that?
Yeah, I think we know that, don't we? I mean, we all went through COVID where we were wearing masks, and yet we could still smell a lot of what was going on around us, and the heavy perfume that somebody was wearing. So I think we got a pretty good education on the ineffectiveness of masking for smallest particles, the smaller submicron particles, and for the gases that are in the air. So again, I don't know that there's an actual solution. I mean, I'm not the kind of guy that's going to walk around outside in a hazmat outfit, But the truth is that I think the recommendation that they made about staying inside is really not a bad one. If you can stay inside and you can control the air that you're breathing inside, if you don't have to go outside, then there's not a reason to, because you're exactly right. I think the thing that concerns me about these kinds of fires are all of the other contaminants that are in the air besides just the wood burning particulate.
Absolutely. And, one final comment on the masks. Wearing a mask is going to help, but you can't get that full sense of security saying, oh, I'm wearing a mask, I'm protected, because you're only protected from some of the larger particulate, not the gases, the chemicals, and everything else, just like viruses would go right through a mask. So that's a definite concern. So without rebuilding your house, preparing for the next time the wind shifts and blows the fire smoke this way, which it's going to happen again, just because of weather conditions and everything else, what can people do?
Well, so several years ago, you probably remember the Colorado fires, and we had a lot of contact with some folks that actually lived there. In fact, one of our real good friends lost their family cabin from the Colorado fires. They lived in Colorado, but they also had a separate place, which was their cabin, and it just burned to the ground. And as soon as those fires started, we sent them some proactive air purification technologies. And I don't know how much you want to talk about that, or if you've got other people you want to talk about those technologies. But I'll tell you that I'm convinced that that's one of the first things that somebody could do to deal with the particulates and the chemicals and the odors, something holistically, proactively that could be put in the environment to actually purify the air. So I think those two things kind of go hand in hand. One is do the best you can to seal up the environment with, again, weather stripping, caulking, saddles on the doors, exterior doors to close up the thresholds and keep those tighter. Put on insulators on the electrical outlets to make sure you're not pulling air in from the wall cavities. Those kinds of things to me is absolutely a first step. And then the second step would be make sure that I've got really, really good air purification technology, something that's got a good HEPA filter, got a good PCO technology or ionization technology that's going to get rid of those chemicals and those odors and those particulates. Something holistically, proactively dealing with the air quality. That's where I would be.
I agree with you completely. Actually, I did an interview for one of the segments with Michael Pinto. I think I may have mentioned that. And besides just talking about the sensitized individuals, we talked about, and I don't want to talk too much about the episode, but a safe room. Just like you would have for a tornado or a hurricane or a severe event going on, one smaller area that you can protect even more than the other areas. And that's something else you can do depending on your situation.
The interesting thing about this is just from every kind of, like I said, I'm not a health professional, but I do know that one of the reasons why we do so well when we sleep well is because when we sleep well, it builds up our immune system. It strengthens us when we get a really good night's sleep. And I feel the same way about our indoor environments. If I can create a safe environment in which I can breathe good quality, clean air, at least as good as I can, compared to what might be going on outside, or just like drinking purified water over a long period of time, when I'm exposed to that bad water at the restaurant or somewhere else, one time, it's not going to affect me because my immune system is strong enough to be able to deal with those periodic times that I'm having to deal with contamination. So I think in the long run, it's creating a lifestyle in which I'm creating the cleanest, healthiest, safest indoor environment I can for myself in every way that I can, so that when those times come where I can't control the environment, at least my defenses are up to a point and my immune system is strong enough that I can deal with those issues. And I think that's the idea of the safe room. I'm big on creating a safe house.
And I agree. It's like layers of an onion. You just keep putting more layers of protection out there to help and keep you in the best possible situation that you can be in.
That's right.
So Mayor, I believe it was Adams from New York City, talked about good filters or putting a filter in their house. Again, it's a step, it's a layer, but does it really deal with all of it?
No, and I think that's sometimes the wrong impression is left. I remember back during COVID, you probably remember too, Dr. Fauci talked about going and getting a filter. Nothing wrong with getting a filter. I mean, a HEPA filter is a HEPA grade filter is a great product to use to take larger particulate out of the air. In some cases, smaller particulate, depending on how effective it is. But in terms of indoor air quality, there's got to be something in addition to that will actually oxidize a lot of the smaller chemicals and viruses and those sorts of things. So I think you've got to take it to the next level, and that's the idea of having more holistic solution than just having a filter. I kind of laughed the other day, Lance. I was looking at somebody that had actually built an air purifier. This was their concept of an air purifier. They took 4 filters and taped them together, large filters like you would have in your air conditioning system. They took 4 of them, taped them together in a box, like a cube, and then put a box fan on top of it. And they said, see, we're sucking the air through the filters and now everything's great.
It's that dual track or partial logic that people fall into. The people that were wearing the paper towel masks when COVID came out. See, I have a mask on.
Exactly.
Yes, you do. Is it doing anything for you? No. And that's kind of where we're at with this. People have to be very cautious as to their information sources. I mean, the internet's out there for everybody, but somebody says, here's a widget that'll take care of this for you. Well, it takes care of a part of it, but is that enough? Is that enough for you to now say, I'm wearing my paper mask and I'm going to go out into the smoke-filled environment because I'm wearing my mask? Yeah. It does nothing for your eyes or even filter anything. So it's a concern that, people look for reliable sources of information, and think through the process. Again, the dirty glass of water, the cloudy water, you're not going to drink that, but if I filter it, the chemicals are still going to be in there. You're
Right.
just not going to see
Yeah.
the sediment that makes it look bad. Same thing with the smoke. The statistics as of now on the fires in the United States and in Canada separately, they both burn between 6.5 and 7.5 million acres of forest a year. It's a massive amount. To date, not even 6 full months through the year, Canada's burned almost 9.5 million acres. So it's 1.5 times in 6 months instead of 12 what they've burned so far.
Incredible.
California right now has had a shift in weather. I was just talking, like I said, with Dan from California, and he says that the weather out there is gorgeous. It's cooler, it's not that hot, but that's going to change. And this is just what's happening. In the Northeast, we haven't had rain here in 3.5, almost 4 weeks. It is bone dry out. A small brush fire right now could become a very large concern. And again, the air quality, the ash that's already out there, the film on the cars, the film that people keep stirring up when they walk out there, we're still breathing that, even though it looks nice out. So keep that in mind.
Well, I wish people would talk more about indoor air quality and as much as they talk about outdoor air quality, because again, indoor air quality is something that you can control. Outdoor air quality, a little more difficult.
Well, what the biggest problem that we've always talked about with indoor air quality is people become nose blind. 5 minutes in your environment, you don't smell the odor that somebody coming over would say, "Oh, what is that smell?" You go, "What smell? What are you talking about?" And outdoors is completely different because it's so large. It's not where you feel closed in and you're breathing, which is fine. The only time people complain is when they see the yellow forming on their cars from the pollen, when those pollen seasons hit. But other than that, people take it for granted that it's always going to be there for them.
Yeah.
That's the false sense of security of the paper mask, or it's always going to be good until it isn't.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Well, I think we've got an opportunity to address this in a very positive way. And the truth is that if people would take the time to create cleaner, safer, healthier indoor environments, that's going to be long lasting. And that's going to help them in a lot of different ways when the next issue comes our way.
Absolutely. Doug, I appreciate you spending the time with us here today. And
Great to talk to you.
And we will chat again in the future.
All right, man. Thank you. Have a great day.
You too.
Hi, my name is Doug Hoffman. I'm with Normie, and this is kind of a public service announcement for home inspectors who think they can't do mold sampling. In the state of Florida and other licensing states, they have a threshold for mold sampling, and if it's below that threshold, you're allowed to do it as a home inspector. And our class coming up in August, the Certified Mold Screener, is designed specifically for home inspectors who are asked that question when they're doing a home inspection. And truth is, even the board in Florida has agreed that home inspectors can do mold inspections as long as it's below the 10-foot threshold. And so the Certified Mold Screener will give you the opportunity to answer the question for your customer and give them 3 options: a do-it-yourself option, a recommendation to a certified mold assessor licensed in the state, if necessary, or you can take the samples yourself. You don't even have to write a report. Our class, the Certified Mold Screener, is designed specifically for home inspectors. We've had a lot of success already in New York with this and other places across the country. We're inviting you to our class. Go to training.normie.org or contact the Home Inspectors Association of South Florida, and they'll be able to give you information about this class. Coming up in August, hope to see you there.
The following broadcast is made possible by supporters of the Normie Environmental Task Force, the Experience Trade Show and Convention, Reusip, EnviroScreening Lab, and Best Living Systems.
Hurricanes. If you didn't know any differently, they'd seem at the beginning like any other storm. And that's the deceptive part. The devastation, the flooding, the loss of life, the imprint of the loss of heartfelt memories, all occur after the storm has passed.
The latest technology gives us the opportunity to be prepared way in advance of impending danger, and yet we wait. Or worse yet, we decide to stay. We risk so much when the effects of these devastating events could be so easily diminished if we had only listened. As the storm approaches, it very quickly becomes too late to gather the important possessions and memories, too late to batten down the hatches, too late to protect our property or sometimes our very lives. With the aftermath of Katrina, I can assure you I have changed my game plan for the next Katrina, and I hope you have or will change yours. My name is Doug Hoffman, the Executive Director of NORMI, the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. We train mold professionals to assess, evaluate, and solve the problems associated with water events, both major and minor, as those events result in mold damage to property, and in conjunction with the NORMI Pro Environmental Task Force are ready to help when disaster hits. Check our resources at normi.org and normiproetf.org for current ways you can help yourself and others when disaster hits. Sometimes an event is so horrific that it results in massive flooding and wind damage. We lived through Hurricane Katrina right here in Louisiana and have been privileged to help hundreds, maybe thousands of Katrina victims rebuild their lives after one of the most devastating natural events ever to hit the Gulf coasts of Texas, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, and Florida. We learned some very important lessons, and we're hoping this short video will help you prepare for the next major event that may hit your community. With thermal imaging and from a satellite, the images are staggeringly beautiful, but closer to Earth, in the midst of the rampage, frightening doesn't begin to tell the story. Being prepared for what might be coming and then managing the recovery will help you keep your mind on the important task ahead. The unpredictable nature of the season simply requires it. The dates of the North American hurricane season span from June 1st to November 30th. By no means will these dates prevent the forming or sustaining of a tropical event in the Gulf of Mexico, the Atlantic Ocean, the Caribbean Sea, or the Pacific, but these dates are a guide or a timeline based on previous storms over the last century. Dropping your guard or dismissing weather events outside of these dates could result in being caught off guard for an approaching storm. But these dates, in particular, are a time to be specially aware of the news and weather reports. 26 named storms churned in the Atlantic in 2005, and many of them hit land. Following their paths shows the unpredictable nature of nature. Because of the fickle nature and path of many tropical storms, a large part of the general population hesitates or fails to take precautions until the last minute. In the year 2005, an unprecedented number of named storms developed in the eastern and Gulf Coast, exceeding even the English alphabet, and many of those storms made landfall. And when that occurs, especially in densely populated areas, the results are mass evacuations, highway gridlock, and supply shortages. In simple terms, everyone that waited until the last minute is scrambling to prepare or leave. The following information is provided as part of the Community Awareness Program, CAP, from NORMI, the National Organization of Remediators and Mold Inspectors. Additional CAP programs can be found at normi.org or at flood.normi.org and include realtors awareness, first responders awareness, and other information targeted to specific groups. These are presented in an effort to fulfill our mission and fill a void in accurate and timely trainings. How often have you seen news reports about the long lines at hardware stores where residents of areas prone to tropical events are waiting in lines for hours to purchase plywood or other needed supplies? The general rule of thumb is if you find yourself in this situation, waiting in line to take your turn, you may have waited too long. Our goal at Normie is to provide you with general preparation and safety information for your time before, during, and after the event. Let's get started, and please feel free to take notes or revisit this video often. Sometimes a reminder can be very timely. So let's get started. Plan to be prepared before the event. Know how and where to get emergency information from your local emergency management offices. Follow instructions for evacuations if you are advised to leave, and leave. Understand that if you do not evacuate or find yourself in a situation where you need emergency assistance during the event, you may be on your own until the event has passed. Emergency services will also be stretched beyond normal capacity, and assistance may be days or weeks away. Remember that people that choose not to evacuate when instructed to do so are either victims or survivors. Neither title is as a result of good planning. When you do evacuate, if you have carefully planned your evacuation route well in advance of the evacuation and you know where you will be staying, life will be much easier while you are displaced. So if you are not prepared to fend for yourself for an extended period of time, consider relocating prior to the event. If you have the time, tidy up the house, wash and put away the dishes, clean the coffee pot. When you return, you'll feel better about this kind of detailed planning in advance and appreciate the preparation you've made for your return. And of course, traveling during the event is not advisable in most cases. Some of the following information are recommendations from FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And they suggest, before the storm, make plans to secure your property. Permanent storm shutters offer the best protection for windows. A second option is to board up those windows with 5/8 marine plywood, cut to fit and ready to install. Tape does not prevent windows from breaking. Install straps or additional clips to securely fasten your roof to the frame structure. This will reduce roof damage. Be sure trees and shrubs around your home are well trimmed. Charge your cellular phone and refill your meds. Clear the gutters and downspouts of any extra debris that could become airborne. Secure your boat. Consider a safe room, a place where you will not be hurt by broken glass or structural damage. Take your outdoor furniture and put it indoors. Get evacuation information, which is readily available, and get a local shelters list. Where can you go if you need to? If you can't get out quickly enough or you get stranded because of traffic, where can you go? In regards to evacuation guidelines, there are really just two categories: what you should always do and what you could do if time permits. As my dad used to say, if you prepare for time to permit, it will. This list gives you these two priorities to consider. Always keep a full tank of gas in your car if an evacuation seems likely. Gas stations may be closed during emergencies and unable to pump gas during power outages. Plan to take one car per family to reduce congestion and delay. If time permits, gather disaster supplies and put them in a kit stored in your home. Always make transportation arrangements with friends or local government if you do not own a car. If time permits, make sure you've got sturdy shoes and clothing that provide some protection, such as long pants, long-sleeved shirts, and a cap. Always listen to battery-operated radio and follow local evacuation instructions. And if time permits, let others know where you're going. Always gather your family, and go if you are instructed to evacuate immediately. Knowing your family is safe will give you a great peace of mind during the uncertainty of the events that might follow the storm. If time permits, secure your home. Close and lock the doors and windows. Unplug electrical equipment such as radios and televisions and small appliances such as toasters, microwaves. Leave freezers and refrigerators plugged in, or if time permits, empty them so that there'll be no risk of damage being done to those freezers or refrigerators. You should take some precautions on your way out. Leave early enough to avoid being trapped by severe weather. Plan to then follow recommended evacuation routes. Do not take shortcuts. They may be blocked. Be alert for washed out roads and bridges. Do not drive into flooded areas. And stay away from downed power lines. And of course the question always arises, when should we evacuate? Well, you should evacuate under the following conditions. First, if you are directed by local authorities to do so, be sure to follow their instructions. If you live in a mobile home or temporary structure, such shelters are particularly hazardous during hurricanes, no matter how well fastened they may be to the ground. A Cat 4 hurricane can remove the entire roof of a commercial structure, so what do you think it could do to something as light as a mobile home? And of course, you've always got the added concern of tornadoes. If you live in a high-rise building, you should evacuate. Hurricane winds are stronger at higher elevations, so your safety might be jeopardized if you decide to stay. If you live on the coast or on a floodplain, near a river, or on an inland waterway, flooding might be the biggest concern because a storm surge of some kind always precedes a hurricane. The Gulf Coast of Louisiana and Mississippi experienced anywhere from 15 to 40-foot surges, enough to totally wipe out the coastline for several miles back into the non-water frontland. If you feel you're in danger, you should leave. And if you have health issues that might need emergency or regular attention, you should go to a place where your concerns can be addressed readily. So what if you decide to stay? Well, you definitely want to listen to the radio or TV for information, so be sure to have plenty of batteries for both. Secure your home. Close the storm shutters, secure outdoor objects, and bring them indoors. Turn off the utilities, if instructed to do so. Otherwise, turn the refrigerator thermostat to the coldest setting and keep the doors closed. This will ensure the preservation of frozen foods for some time following the storm should power not be restored for a long period of time. Well, frozen foods could last for a couple of days in the freezer, even without power. Turn off propane tanks. Avoid using the phone except for serious emergencies. Moor your boat if time permits. And store a supply of water for sanitary purposes such as cleaning and flushing toilets. Did you know that a toilet will flush simply by filling it with a gallon of water? After thoroughly cleaning it out, fill the bathtub and other large containers with water. If you're unable to evacuate, have you considered the possibility of creating a safe room? If you don't have one, follow these simple guidelines. Make sure that you stay indoors during the hurricane and away from windows and glass doors. Close all the interior doors besides securing and bracing exterior doors. Keep curtains and blinds closed. Don't be fooled if there is a lull. It could be the eye of the storm, and the high winds could pick up again. If necessary for your own safety or that of your family, take refuge in a small interior room, closet, or hallway on the lowest level, but where flooding won't be a concern. And if you sense tornadic activity, which often accompanies a hurricane, lie on the floor under a table or another sturdy object. We have incredible technologies that give us advanced warning, tell us the intensity of what we might be facing, and track the storm from its inception to its end. What makes us think we can weather the storm? But we often try. The following are the basic emergency kits and supplies recommended by FEMA. Basic disaster supplies should be stocked in preparation for what may occur during and after a flood, hurricane, or other water event. Let's take a moment to simply list the 6 basic items, and then we'll talk about each one of them in a little bit of detail. This checklist will serve as a great starting place to be sure you are prepared. There are 6 basics you should stock in your home: water, food, first aid supplies, clothing, bedding, and sanitation supplies, tools, and specialty items. And keep the items that you would most likely need during an evacuation in an easy-to-carry container. Possible containers could include a large covered trash container, or a camping backpack, or even a duffel bag. First, water. How much water do I need? You should have at least a 3-day supply of water, and you should store at least 1 gallon of water per person per day. A normally active person needs at least 1/2 gallon of water daily just for drinking. Additionally, in determining adequate quantities, take the following into account. Individual needs vary depending on age, physical condition, activity, diet, and climate. Children, nursing mothers, and ill people need more water. Very hot temperatures can double the amount of water needed, and a medical emergency might require additional water. How should I store water? Well, to prepare safest and the most reliable emergency supply of water, it's recommended that you purchase commercially bottled water. Keep that bottled water in its original container and don't open it unless you need to use it. Observe any expiration or use by date. If you're preparing your own containers of water, it's recommended that you purchase food-grade water storage containers from surplus or camping supply stores to use for water storage. Before filling with water, thoroughly clean the containers with dishwashing soap and water and rinse completely so there is no residual soap. Follow the directions below on filling the container with water. If you choose to use your storage containers, choose 2-liter plastic soft drink bottles. Not plastic jugs or cardboard containers that have had milk or fruit juice in them. Milk protein and fruit sugars cannot be adequately removed from these containers and provide an environment for bacterial growth when water is stored in them. Cardboard containers also leak easily and are not designed for long-term storage of liquids. Also, don't use glass containers because they can break and they're heavy. If you're storing water in plastic soda bottles, follow these steps. Thoroughly clean the bottles with dishwashing soap and water. Rinse completely so there's no residual soap. Then sanitize those bottles by adding a solution of 1 teaspoon of non-scented liquid household chlorine bleach to a quart of water. Swish the sanitizing solution in the bottle so that it touches all surfaces, and then after sanitizing the bottle, thoroughly rinse out the sanitizing solution with clean water. Then you're ready to fill the bottles with water and seal them. Food. However you do it, you need a checklist. Put it in a magnetic clipboard attached to the side of your refrigerator, a post-it note on the inside of a kitchen cabinet, on your PDA or your phone app. But make a list now while you're calm and in your right mind. And remember these important points. Store at least a 3-day supply of non-perishable food. Select foods that require no refrigeration, preparation, or cooking, and little or no water. If you must heat food, pack a can of Sterno and matches. Select food items that are compact and lightweight. Avoid foods that will make you thirsty. Choose salt-free crackers, whole grain cereals, and canned foods with high liquid content. Be sure to include a manual can opener. That might come in very handy. And include a selection of the following foods in your disaster supply kit and put them in a waterproof container. Foods like ready-to-eat meats, fruits, and vegetables, canned fruits, juices, milk, soup, staples like sugar, salt, and pepper, high-energy foods like peanut butter, jelly, crackers, granola bars, trail mix, vitamins and minerals, foods for infants, the elderly, or special dietary needs. And don't forget comfort stress foods like cookies, hard candy, sweetened cereals, instant tea, or coffee. First aid supplies. First aid kits can be purchased, but some people prefer to make their own. So we've listed here 18 things that should be included so you could supplement a pre-packaged kit or develop your own. You'll need to decide which items you would want to include or exclude based on budget restraints, but even the seemingly least needed item could become extremely important in a life or death situation. Take the time to study this list, and we've provided a printable copy of this list as a resource at hurricane.normie.org website for your review. And a medical kit, again stored for safekeeping, could include the following items: aspirin or non-aspirin pain relievers, anti-diarrhea medication, an antacid for upset stomach, syrup of ipecac to induce vomiting if advised by the Poison Control Center, possibly a laxative, and maybe an activated charcoal, again for use if advised by the Poison Control Center. Emergency and safety items might also include these items, which would be safely stored but probably not in the same box with the first aid kit. Gas cans, ice chest or two, disposable cups, plates, eating utensils, and paper towels, black trash bags, vinyl gloves, maybe moistened cleaning towelettes. Again, having these items far in advance of an impending storm is simply the best way to avoid having to find them in an emergency and when you might be in panic mode. And by all means, take the time to contact your local American Red Cross chapter to obtain a free basic first aid manual. Clothing, bedding, and sanitation supplies are extremely important, and especially if you live in a cold climate, you've got to think about warmth because it's possible that you would not have heat. So include at least one complete change of clothing and footwear per person. A light jacket or coat, long pants, a long sleeve shirt, sturdy shoes or work boots, and of course waterproof would be preferred. Hat, gloves, and scarf, rain gear, thermal underwear, blankets or sleeping bags, and sunglasses. And on the sanitation side, don't forget the toilet paper, soap, liquid detergent, feminine supplies, personal hygiene items, plastic garbage bags with ties for personal sanitization use, plastic bucket with a tight lid, and disinfectant. Maybe even a little bit of household bleach for sanitization. Next on our list is tools, and there are a lot of tools that people don't think about needing until they need them. Mess kits or paper cups, plates, and plastic utensils. An emergency preparedness manual, there's some good ones out there. Portable battery-operated radio or television and extra batteries. Flashlights and extra batteries. Cash or traveler's checks and some change. Non-electric can opener, a utility knife. Fire extinguisher, small canister, ABC type. A tube tent. Pliers. Tape. Compass. Matches in a waterproof container, aluminum foil, plastic storage containers, rabbit ears for your TV, signal flare, paper, pencil, needles, thread, a medicine dropper, a shut-off wrench to turn off household gas and water, a whistle, an axe, plastic sheeting, and a map of the area for locating shelters. And finally, specialty items. Remember family members with special needs such as infants and elderly or disabled persons. For baby, formula, diapers and wipes, baby food, bottles, powdered milk, pacifiers, and maybe medications. And don't forget the adults. Heart and high blood pressure medication, insulin, prescription drugs, denture needs, contact lenses and supplies, extra eyeglasses, hearing aid batteries. That's a lot of stuff to remember. And you can make this a special project, taking the important family documents and putting them together in a place where they're safe. Photocopies of credit and identification cards, maybe in a Ziploc bag, plastic container. But you want to keep these records in a waterproof, portable container. Your will and insurance policies, contracts, deeds, stocks, and bonds. Photo IDs, passports, social security cards, immunization records, bank account numbers, credit card account numbers and companies, inventory of valuable household goods or important telephone numbers, family records like birth and marriage and death certificates, your checkbook, cash and coins, and then of course some entertainment, games, and books that you might need while you're away. So, what's the target? The goal? The goal during a tropical event is to not need the items and procedures that we discussed in this presentation. However, being prepared is a good alternative and may make the difference between being a victim and being a survivor. On a personal note, from those who have been there, during the aftermath of Katrina, many suffered intense wind damage with trees through their roof and rain pouring through. Your prized possessions, though not as important as your very life, of course, should be taken with you. If you evacuate, and you can do so without compromising the essentials, take the things that are important with you. I want to personally thank you for taking the time to watch this video. It's our hope that you will never be in a situation where you will have to consider all the things we've discussed. But if you are, now you're prepared to be prepared and survive. For more information, go to normie.org or normieproetf.org or email us at support@normie.org. We're here to serve you. Thank you very much.
Okay, everybody, and we are back here at the Experience trade show in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I am happy and privileged, actually, to be sitting next to an award winner from R&R Magazine, Lori Jones. So, Lori, I want to say hello and tell us about this award, because I was trying to read about it, and it's just more than I can explain it correctly.
It's actually Women in Restoration, and you are nominated by colleagues, friends, family even, and they open it up for about a month. And there's usually a couple of hundred people that get nominated, and they go through a judging cycle, and they read everything about everybody, and then they choose from there. And I won.
Well, you know, I was reading through the article, and let me just hold this up for everybody. Big article. That's her. That's her. You can see her. There's some pretty heady runner-ups that were in the group here.
They're amazing women.
I was reading about that, and so it's pretty impressive that you were chosen over them.
I'm very honored to be chosen. I'm been surprised. I mean,
Really?
Yes, because I don't think since I'm doing something that I love to do, I don't think it's outside of the norm. So to me, it's just every day, and then to be recognized for it, it was just like, really? Thank you. Oh wow, and you just. Whenever I was saying thank you last night, I got really emotional because it just hit me how important this award was, or is, I should say.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So tell us about the business that you're in and what you actually do, because again, I was trying to read through some of the titles, and there's a long list here of things that you're certified in and the type of work you do, forensic restoration. Let's start with that. Tell people what that actually is.
Forensic restoration. I'm actually a certified bioforensic restoration specialist. And what I can do is I clean up after crime and trauma scenes and hoarding, mass casualties, WMDs. And I'm also a trainer with my husband, Jeff. And so we teach people how to do these things too. And it's a microbial warrior. And that's basically what we do. We treat our business back home in Oklahoma as a business or as a ministry, because it's what it is to us. It's a ministry. And so we're going out to help people. So when they call us, they're not having a good day.
I understand that, and I've come across a lot of that, from my past and everything.
Yes.
But it's funny because sitting here talking to you, it's kind of like the mild-mannered reporter that rips off the mask and is now the superhero in forensic cleanup, crime scene cleanup, meth lab, stuff like that. You also do, right?
We're just now starting to dip our toes in the meth, but we were staying away from it because we wanted to specialize specifically on the forensic restoration right now, because we wanted to be able to get everything under our coats and be able to teach what we do and explain it the way it needs to be explained and train people so that they will be safe when they do it.
Well, I know that you deal with a lot of high-end equipment too. And earlier I was over by your booth talking with you and Jeff, and somehow you guys got me to put on one of the helmets and breathing kits that you have. And this thing was pretty impressive. I mean, I've done a lot of work through the medical side and through the restoration side, where you're wearing N95 masks, half face masks, all kinds of PPE, but this is like next level stuff. What is that thing I was wearing? It's a helmet and breathing apparatus all in one?
It is a Max Air unit, and what it is, it's a PAPR, and it's powered air purifying apparatus.
Resuscitator or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like
My
that.
brain's not working right now, but it literally takes air and puts it in through the filter, and it goes over your face, so it's positive air. So you don't have to have a fit test. You can wear your glasses and you can have facial hair. So the men love it.
And I understand that because it's positive pressure, you can be in fairly contaminated environments, actually more contaminated than wearing just a regular N95 mask or even a half face mask,
Correct.
because it's protecting your eyes and everything else.
Correct.
This is stuff that when we're talking, you said is also used in the medical community.
Yes.
See, I've never seen that, but how do they use it there?
Same way. They put them on, and if anybody were to sneeze at them, it wouldn't matter because they have a cuff over their face, and so that would protect their three holes: their eyes, ears, or eyes, nose, and mouth. So it protects your three orifices, and so you're protected. And like I said, it goes through a high efficiency filter, so it won't go through that filter.
So medical grade type filtration for all the nasty stuff that's out, even like when COVID was
Correct.
really a thing, it would be
Yes.
protective for that.
Yes.
Well, that's interesting because I know that a lot of our people through emergency services, medical services, I mean, they were wearing 2 and 3 masks at a time, trying to protect themselves. And it sounds like this is something that does it all by itself.
Yes. And plus with those masks, people were getting rashes around their faces because it would irritate their skin. You don't have to worry about that with this.
Okay. Well, again, I was wearing it. I know Doug took some pictures of me. I'm afraid to see what he did with those, but I'm sure we'll find out in the near time. So what do you have planned next? You already won the Woman of the Year in Restoration Award here. What's next?
Just get more and more people trained to do their job safely. That's our goal.
And where are you located?
Oklahoma City, Oklahoma.
Is that where you teach, or do you guys teach
No,
all
we
over?
teach pretty much everywhere that has a facility that can actually accommodate what we do, because there's some facilities we use real blood and real brains from the people that the butchers, not butchers, but the places.
Talking about
where-
animals,
Yes,
Yeah.
animals.
not people. You're not
No,
digging
no,
graves.
right.
Okay. Take it to
So-
a whole new level. That
Right.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll put it on walls, and that's how we train. So you're actually getting in there and you're cleaning up these substances off the walls and floors or wherever we had put it, and then we test you. So
Okay.
it's real live
Is
stuff.
there a special certification for this?
For
For forensic type of cleaning and stuff?
because there's a certified forensic operator, then there's a bioforensic or certified forensic restoration specialist, and then a certified bioforensic restoration specialist after that. And we are also doing high risk, high level decontamination specialists where we are training how to deactivate or where you take fentanyl and just destroy it, where it will not
Well,
hurt
fentanyl is such a
anybody.
big problem
It
right
is.
now.
It's a really big problem.
I know that's in crime scene cleanup and meth labs, fentanyl production and distribution, but also in the medical field. We were talking earlier about, patients wearing, 10, 12 fentanyl patches,
Yeah.
and just throwing them around, and now the contamination is everywhere.
Yep. Yeah. And I was talking to a relative of mine, and they were telling me that the way they get rid of their fentanyl patch, because they have issues, and we of course won't go into that. But there's a way you're supposed to fold them up and get rid of them. Of course, I didn't ask them how they did it, but if they're not disposed properly, yes, very big problem.
Yeah. And
there's people that are just going to throw them off.
oh, absolutely. And it's absorbed through your skin. So
Yes.
just accidentally coming in contact with it, picking it up, you can affect a lot of people.
Yes.
Interesting. Well, it sounds like you got some work cut out for you with training like the
do.
rest
And
of everybody.
What we do is scientific based.
Mhm.
So it's not just like, we think it's going to work. We've actually talked to scientists and figured everything out with their help.
So is there a filtering program, going back to what you said earlier about who can take your classes because of the way that you teach your classes, with real blood, real debris from animals and stuff like that?
Not really. You'll learn pretty quickly whether you're going to be able to do it or not, because during presentations, we do show very graphic photographs, and we've had some people that actually got up at other room and walked out because they couldn't handle it. But usually is the people that come are the ones that they think pretty much they're secure that they can do
They
it,
can do it.
or if they've already done a couple of jobs and they just want to learn how to do it correctly.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk to about, or anybody online to send them a message, say hello, anything like that?
No, just I love my family.
All right. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
being here with us. And we'll have to chat some more. I would love to take one of the classes one day.
Okay,
So we'll
that'd be
talk.
awesome. Okay, sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to welcome my guest today, Michael Pinto, who is the CEO of Wonder Makers. Now, I've known Mike for quite a few years, and we've done quite a few trainings together over the years and been in many conventions. And he is a wealth of knowledge when it deals with indoor environments as far as sensitized individuals. And that's the purpose of having him here today. The recent outbreak of forest fires in Canada has really changed what's been going on, at least in the central to the eastern part of the United States. Now, I know California has its own issues with wildfires, but that hasn't reached us to this point. But this is a new situation with these fires, with the winds coming out of the north and northwest blowing straight down into the major population areas of the United States on the eastern coast. So I want to bring Mike in here and let him say a quick hello. And if there's anything I missed on the intro, Mike, please let me know, and whoever else is watching this know also. So, Mike, say hello.
Well, thanks, Lance. I appreciate being here very much. What I would say, however, is that it's not just the eastern coast that smoke plume from the Canadian forest fires is literally cutting across a good section of the Midwest, too. So here in Michigan, we're not quite as bad as you guys out there on the East Coast, but it's not good either.
Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, you're obviously further north and closer to the Canadian border than I am. I'm in New Jersey. Is it affecting you, and how is it affecting your area?
Well, yes, it is affecting us. And as I said just a moment ago, it's not good. Anytime you get outdoor air quality that's worse than what you typically get inside, that's a whole flip on the issue in terms of the things that we're used to thinking about and even teaching in a lot of our classes, because the standard line from the EPA is that the outside air can be up to 20 times cleaner than the inside air, and people spend 90% of their time inside, and so bad indoor air can cause a real problem. And a lot of us in the industry are focused on that, and then when we are faced with a situation like this where the outside air is dangerous to people, and that is the case, it is literally dangerous to people, then what do? Where do you go to hide, so to speak? So it is impacting us here in the Midwest. The way that it sets up, there's kind of like an arc of smoke that's coming down from Canada, and we're on what would be the left-hand edge of that arc here in Michigan. And Lake Michigan seems to be the borderline in terms of keeping the clean air, over to Chicago and to the west. But right down through Michigan and Indiana and Ohio, and then over Pennsylvania, New York, New Jersey, the entire East Coast is pretty well hit right now by the residue from the forest fires.
Yeah, we've seen, especially wintertime with Lake Michigan, it creates its own weather systems. So I could see how that would become a border, keeping the weather at bay or the smoke at bay in that part. But, what's really interesting is all the news stations, that's all they're talking about now, the unhealthy air conditioning outside and inside that we have to deal with. And, this is kind of like the dirty water glass scenario. We know what's in the outdoor air and the indoor air all the time, and you can't see it, so nobody pays attention to it. Well, not nobody, we do, the industry people do. But if you were to hand somebody a glass of water that had a brown tinge to it, it was discolored, people wouldn't drink it because they could see it and they would know there was things in there that they don't want to take in, even though it does contain, mercury and all kinds of other nasty contaminants regularly. And the same thing that's happening now with the air quality, people can see it. And that's really, I think, what's jumping out and causing people to really take notice to what's going on. You're absolutely right. Normally, the outside air is much better than the inside air. So when people are inside, they normally go outside to breathe better, and they can't in this case. They have to hide inside. So that brings us to the sensitized people that we were talking about. This is something that's, very close and dear to you. We deal with it on a daily basis here at Normie with people that can't get help from regular assessors, remediators, people that are in the industry, which is why you have a class. You're the lead instructor, the NCRSI class, the class for sensitized individuals. Actually, it's teaching remediators how to deal with them. And also the certified mold professional, which is expanding even beyond that. So those are two of your specialties. And with that, maybe you can answer this question. How come the outside air right now, obviously beyond people being emotionally reacting to it, so troublesome for sensitized individuals, even more so than regular people?
Well, what I would start off with is saying that I think when you're dealing with outside air like we are today, everybody has to be concerned about it. The difference is that the sensitized individuals have to be concerned at a higher level than even the normal folks. So I'm sure you've heard over there on the East Coast, they're canceling certain sporting events and outdoor activities and things like that because the air just isn't healthy. And so you want to be, limiting your amount of exposure, just like we tell people in a, water damaged or mold damaged house. Sometimes they have to get out of that house to protect their health. The problem here, of course, as we've been talking about, where do you go if it's the whole outside that's contaminated by the forest fires? And so we're literally looking at it, flipping the whole script upside down, if you will. We now have to think about houses and the air in the houses being a refuge for the people from what they're potentially going to be exposed to on the out of doors. And for the sensitized individual, it's even more significant for them because a lot of times we talk about mold sensitized individuals, and that's where it starts. But virtually every sensitized individual that I'm familiar with and have worked with over 20 plus years now, they develop cross sensitivities. So they start out with a mold exposure that causes a decrease in their health, and then they become sensitive to other things. They become sensitive to tobacco smoke that they weren't sensitive to before. They become sensitive to some of the chemicals, like, low levels of formaldehyde in the home that perhaps they weren't sensitive before. Perfumes, all sorts of things. They develop these cross sensitivities. And when we're dealing with the outside air that's impacted by the wildfires, it's particulates, it's volatile organic compounds, and it's gases. So if they're cross-sensitive to anything, it's going to be in one of those categories, and then they're going to have problems with it. So that's really the issue.
I have a few calls into different contacts at different labs that we normally use, especially the ones that deal with VOCs, the volatile organic compounds. And I'm waiting on those callbacks that we just made recently. But I'm looking for what might be in this new smoke plume that we're getting that could be so offensive to people with and without sensitivities. I don't know if you know any of the chemistries that may be involved with this, though I have noticed the burning odor, and it's different than normal. This isn't like a wood fireplace or a fire pit.
Right. And some of that is going to be dependent upon what sort of forest are burning, whether they're hardwoods or evergreens, things like that. The evergreen forest, which is a good share of what's burning up in Canada right now, because they're closer to the Arctic Circle and that sort of stuff. So those are going to have a lot more PAHs, aromatic hydrocarbons in them, and that's from the oils and everything that's burning in the pine trees and the spruce trees and that sort of stuff. So then you're also going to get a whole chemical stew, if you will, from that, because depending on the temperature and whether they're exposed to actual flame or just the heat from it, where it is, whether it's protected by the bark, all these other things, you just get this massive amount of organic compounds that get liberated into the air during these fires. And then the ash and the smoke, which is basically both of those are small particulates, those tend to sometimes be even more airborne than the VOCs, because the chemicals can be a little sticky and a little heavy. But when they attach to these small ash particles, then they're transported, as we're finding out, thousands of miles into the airstream. The heat of the forest fire pushes them up a mile or more, and then they're in the airstream and they're heading downstream. But by the time that it gets to New York City or Kalamazoo, Michigan, where I am, or things like that, most of the gases, the carbon monoxide, the excess carbon dioxide, the nitrogen compounds and that sort of stuff, that's pretty well mixed and diluted. So the two things that are impacting the folks there on the East Coast and the sensitized individuals are mostly going to be those volatile organic compounds, which are those PAHs and particles. So,
on a small scale, I've been involved with emergency medical services for almost 50 years. And I've seen over the years people having severe reactions to being around a fire pit or a campfire. And when you start to look into it, you find out that it wasn't from the wood that they're burning. It was from the accidental dumping of poison ivy into the fire pit that was still around some of the logs. And as they burn the poison ivy, it's aerosolizing and getting encased in that smoke, and they're inhaling that and having severe reactions to it.
Well, and then think of everything else that's going on there. The PAHs I was talking about, the first word for the P is phenols. So there's all these different phenolic compounds that are getting burned up, and that's your oils, and that's your your irritants, like you were talking about with poison ivy. But remember, forest fires don't stay forest fires. I mean, they run across roads, and they literally will melt the tar on an asphalt road, and sometimes the roads actually start to burn. So now you've got all of that oil product, anything that's a building in the way, or a vehicle that gets trapped in the fire, or a house. Of course, you're going to have all of the man-made products, artificial products that then burn. That all goes up in the air, and comparatively, that may be a small percentage of what's burning, but from the sensitized individual, that can actually be a bigger issue sometimes than just the individual smoke particles. Like you said, it's what attaches to the smoke particles. And then those smoke particles are so small, they get breathed in, they go deep into the lungs. And that whole combination, small particles going deep into the lungs and small particles carrying, pardon the expression, crap deep into the lungs. That's not a scientific term there, by the way, Lance. That's just a common term. But there's so much stuff that's on it. It's hard to know from breath to breath what's actually being taken in. And so, again, caution is the byword for anyone, but particularly for the sensitized individuals.
In the remediation industry, in the meteorological industry, they refer to things, especially with hurricanes, hide from the wind, run from the water, because of the amount of damage that can be done. You can hide from the wind, take shelter of that, but in water you can't. Water's going to seep into everything. But we're dealing with something that's unique here because we're 1,000 miles away from these fires, and we are severely being affected. So running isn't really a realistic situation. I think knowledge is something that would help. People understanding the risks, understanding, well, maybe today's not the day to go outside and, cut my grass, and spend a good 2 hours or 3 hours out there in this serious weather or this heavy fog of smoke. And understanding that will definitely help people. But forecasting this is also an issue. So where could people go to find out how bad their area is and what their risks are to being outside?
Well, I'm sure everybody has their own favorite sources, and there's, weather channels and local governments and state governments, and everybody's kind of jumping on the bandwagon. The one that I use, and it's just, again, my favorite because it's going to be there anytime you have these wildfires and stuff, is a federal government website, and that is, let me make sure I've got it here so that everybody knows, fire.airnow, as in AIRNOW.gov, fire.airnow.gov. And that one's really cool because you punch on that and it brings up a map of basically North America, and it shows where the plume is coming down with the smoke, where the air quality is being impacted, and then it rates it at each major city, and it's not even just major, it's each fairly significant size city has a dot on it that's either green, which means that it's good air quality, or yellow, which means it's questionable. And then most people think, well, then you get to red and that's bad. But this map actually goes 2 other levels. It goes to like purple and to black. And I looked yesterday, Lance had it, and knowing where you are in New Jersey, I just kind of looked to see where you are. I blew it up to look and see in your location. You guys were black. So you're in the heart of it right now.
Yeah, yesterday was really bad. This morning it wasn't too bad, but then we did get an alert that it was going to be going downhill as the day went on. And looking outside now, in June, not a cloud in the sky. It looks like sunset. So, it's that dark. I do have a question. If you were speaking to sensitized individuals as your customers or as a group, what would you tell them to do? I mean, normally if they're inside their home and they're having reactions to that, they go outside. Now they have to stay inside. So what can they do now that they're in their environments that sometimes give them trouble anyways?
Well, I'm going to approach that from two different perspectives, if that's okay. The first one, and I don't mean to sound like I told you so, but you do have to understand, if you're a sensitized individual, it's important for you to take steps now to get your indoor environment clean, because we don't know when we're going to have situations like this where all of a sudden, from no fault of our own, like you said, 1,000 miles away, they got a forest fire and it's having a serious impact on us. And if for some reason our sensitized individuals are saying, well, it's not that bad, and if it does get real bad, or if it gets damper in the house, I can always go outside, or whatever it is, that deferred maintenance or that deferred decision making really is going to have a serious negative impact on them in situations like this, because there may just be times where you can't get away, get away from the problems in your house by leaving your house. You outside, you may be actually facing greater problems than you have in your house. So the first item is just never defer, fixing things that you can fix now until some later date, just because it doesn't seem important to you.
Well, it's the clean glass of water. It's not a concern because you don't see a problem. As soon as it's, brownish or discolored, now it's on your mind. Same thing with the air.
Yep, exactly right. But it would be the same thing. That's why they have, on occasion, you'll have boil water orders as well, right? They don't know exactly what's wrong with the water system. And so they tell people to boil the water. That's why one of the things that they chat about, even in front of hurricanes and things, is get a few cases of bottled water so that you can survive, a couple of days if you have to, without having water coming out of your tap. Fix your house. If you know you've got things going on in your house that are contaminants or whatever, get rid of those, fix it, do the remediation properly so that you've got a good, safe place to be. And then you can, potentially survive a little bit better during these outdoor air quality incidents. But putting that aside, because at some point that's water under the dam. Either they have fixed it or they haven't fixed it, but now they're still facing what's going on outside. So the first thing, and the first couple here, I'm just repeating the standard safety precautions that you're going to get from just about any site. If you don't have to go outside, or you can limit your time outside, don't go outside and limit your time outside. If you do go outside, wear some sort of respiratory protection. I know that I'm seeing a lot of information where people are talking about, you can use your COVID mask and stuff like that. And the answer is, the face masks that were being sold as COVID protection, I won't get into that whole discussion all over again, but that is not going to be appropriate, particularly for the sensitized individuals. At a minimum, they're going to need like an N95, and we recommend N99 or N100 filtering face pieces. So that's going to protect a lot coming in. And remember too that a entry spot for some of this contamination into your body is not just the nose and mouth, but the eyes as well. And fire residue is even worse because of the small particle. So when those get into your eyes and then get diluted by the tears and everything, it actually releases some of those chemicals that are on the particle itself. So the particle may wash out, and get it out of our eyes and everything. But what is left behind and what's being absorbed in through your eyes is some of the chemicals and stuff. So remembering to wash your face when you come in from the outside, wearing a mask to protect yourself, changing clothes if you've been outside for any length, you're not carrying a lot of this stuff in. A lot of similar things that we would talk about if you're coming in from a moldy environment or trying to protect yourself from a moldy environment.
you mentioned about masks, and again, I agree. I don't want to go down that path, and let's talk about masks, good or bad. But just to remind people that just because you're wearing a mask, whether it's an N95, N99, N100, half-face mask with cartridges, it doesn't protect you from the gases. You're getting filtration from particulates only. Now, that's a good and a bad thing, because especially if you are a sensitized individual, you may also have additional health issues and stuff. You're wearing a mask